I'm just like,
all winter, when I've been in the school,
I'm just like,
Good for the government. We're still doing
Mayor Wicker is prone to say when he starts a meeting, Verizon time says it's 7 o'clock. So we're going to begin. Thank you for being here. We'll introduce some folks as we move along. I want to welcome you tonight to this information meeting. We are very pleased you're here. Mayor Wicker, who is in the back, appointed a fire safety task force in October of 2020. Shortly after we began, we were assigned also to look at the police facility as the fire department left, and we renamed ourselves the Public Safety Task Force. We informed the mayor of that. He did not object, so that's the name we've used. We met from October 2020 through March 2021. We learned a number of things. I'd like to review those before we begin to go through the exhibits, and we will go through each one of those one by one. We learned, first of all, that our present staffing model for fire protection in Bluffton and the fire territory is not adequate to protect our residents, our firefighters, or our community. And we'll discuss that in depth. Our facility is not equipped to house gender diversity either now or in the future. We have both genders represented on our fire staff now. We have one sleeping area. We have essentially one shower area and essentially one convenient restroom. It doesn't adequately provide for carcinogen exposure remediation or protection. That is, when the firefighters get back to the station and they've been in a fire and they have the stuff on them, we're not equipped for them to take care of themselves appropriately. It also cannot house all of our equipment. A couple very important points that I want to emphasize. Funding for the recommended additional staff will require no additional fees or taxes for township residents who are not part of the city. We'll go over the financial reports and demonstrate to you that the annual income already being received is much more than adequate to pay the additional cost of 1/2 firefighter per township. It will represent a minimal increase for city residents, about $30 a year, to fund the staff that we're recommending. The funding of the recommended facility changes will require what I would call a minimal increase in city property taxes. For example, if you own a $300,000 home, it'd be at about $100 a year. If it's a $200,000 home, it's much less than that, and it goes on down, and we'll have those specific numbers for you. If the city of Bluffton and the fire territory renew the agreement for fire protection, it's in your packet, we're going to go over it, for at least a 10-year term, we believe that 2 stations would best serve the present and future fire protection needs of the city and the fire territory. And again, we'll go in depth as to why that is the case. The task force has made its recommendations to the mayor and the city council. You have a copy of that letter. The final decisions regarding the information we'll cover tonight will be made by the mayor, the city council, the Fire Protection Territory Board, the Lancaster and Harrison Township trustees and advisory boards, respectively. Ours was a study and recommendation group, not a decision-making group. What we're presenting tonight is our recommendations and the results of our study. I'd like to introduce those task force members here. Some were present last night. Eric Gerber, I haven't seen Eric, Steve Gerber, Chip Mann, Tammy Schaefer, retired police chief, Kyle Hunt, Harrison Township trustee, Marcia Meyer, Lancaster Township trustee. Marcia? There she is. Fire Chief Don Craig, Deputy Chief Chris Wolf, and myself as chair. Let's begin tonight with the documents before you. Please know that we'll take questions at the conclusion, but with all that we have to cover, we want to move through that to be respectful of your time. So we ask you to hold your questions to the end. We assure you we will answer or attempt to answer every question. Document number one. Document number one is the letter that the task force signed and provided to the mayor and the city council. As you look at that, I want you to know that Chief Craig and Deputy Chief Wolf will address point one of that letter. And part of point 3 and point 5 as they review the documents in your packet. I will address point 2, part of point 3, and point 4 as I review documents. The first document is document 2 that we will go over in addition to the letter. This is the actual agreement between the City of Bluffton and the fire territory known as the Harrison Township Fire Protection Territory. Let me explain. That entity, the Harrison Township Fire Protection Territory, is the agent for Lancaster and Harrison Township portions that are not in the city. We'll go over what percentage of the area and population that includes, but this is the second of a 5-year agreement. This is about the 8th year of the agreement for providing these services. If you look down to point 1, the term is for 5 years, commencing January 1, 2019, terminating December 31, 2023. The conditions are spelled out. Who does what? The city will own, lease, and maintain all firefighting equipment, take care of it, and so on as is needed. Point 3, the city agrees to furnish all manpower and pay all expenses incidental to the maintenance of any of this equipment under a separate lease, furnished by the fire district under a separate lease or in a local agreement, and the operation of the fire department by the city. The next page is a very important part in 6A. 6A says that the fire territory will levy a tax. That property tax amounts to approximately 7 cents per hundred for the operation and about 3 cents per hundred for equipment. The money from Lancaster Township and Harrison Township that goes towards fire protection is collected by the treasurer, sent to the auditor, and the auditor then sends Mr. Hunt, the Harrison Township trustee, those entire proceeds from both townships. Now there's a minimal amount you'll see later. I think last year it was $188 or something like that. Extraneous revenue that goes to Lancaster, to Marcia. She then forwards that money to the fire territory. An important part of this is the following. Some have asked, how are inflationary costs taken care of by the fire protection district as it pays its portion for fire protection? But think with me through this. Number one, as property values increase, as new homes are built, as new areas are developed, and if we'll pause and just think for a minute of the regional sewer district's work in the town of Murray, in Craigville, in Toxin, in the other areas, Timber Ridge, you will know that the property values are going to be impacted, and there will be, we think, significant additional housing. As that assessed value increases, the revenue coming to the fire protection district increases. Also, as incomes increase, there's an income tax that's levied that applies to this also. That's not under the control of anyone but the county, but the revenues flow to all taxing units. It also includes vehicle and aircraft excise tax and commercial vehicle excise tax. Those monies have been increasing. They will address, we believe, the inflationary needs as expenses rise in the future as they have in the past. The last page indicates the signatories for the fire territory. Those are the Harrison Township Advisory Board members, and Mr. Mick Jackson is here tonight. He's a member of that. Mick, thank you for coming. Also, as Jeff Hewitt and Diane Markley, they, and I want you to be clear about this, they are the administrative unit for the monies that come from both townships, the unincorporated portions of those townships. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Don and Chris. Don, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Cover just a little bit on some NFPA stuff. This is kind of the governing entity that basically tells us how to do our job safely. I know we're not an NFPA state, which stands for National Fire Protection Association. We're an OSHA state. Both of those entities kind of basically baseline how we're supposed to do our jobs and keep our manpower, including our female firefighters, going home safely. Basically, the NFPA has basically codes and standards that basically enforce everything. It goes down to basically your outlets and your walls to, what your furnishings of your buildings come to. They touch everything. Every rule that's made is pretty much because of fires in history. So unfortunately, that's just how stuff are done. The fire department shall provide an adequate number of personnel to safely conduct emergency scenes. And then those operations will be limited to those manpower that's available on scene. So unfortunately, we're talking about manpower as well. We're manpower challenged. Every department that I know of that we've ever read about, and this is true today, is manpower challenged. It's hard to do our job and do it safely. Members operating in those hazardous areas and emergency incidents shall operate crews of 2 or more. The 2 or more is basically our safety. We don't go in because all it takes is for us to go in, somebody doing a remodel construction project in their home. All it takes is for us not to know that their floor is out and somebody goes right to the basement. Nobody knows they're missing until we take roll call at the end. That's a bad day. So basically, in a nutshell, in the initial stages, and this stuff's all in that paper, basically all in FPA codes. In the initial stages of an incident where only one crew is operating in a hazardous area or construction fire, a minimum of 4 individuals shall be required, consisting of 2 individuals working inside and 2 individuals on the outside, ready to render aid if that's needed. Now that's not considering an operator to basically drive the truck and give them water or provide them what they need to basically do the suppression. It's not considering somebody being on the safety side of it, making sure the building's not going to come down. So, in a nutshell, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Chief Craig and hope he can sum up anything else. Thank you.
Chief Wolf, thank you. He did an excellent job describing document 3. However, there is something I would like to touch on that. He mentioned OSHA and that NFPA regulates the fire department but we're not an NFPA state, we're an OSHA state. OSHA has recognized this and picked up some portions of NFPA. OSHA CFR 29.1910.134 picks up that 2 in, 2 out rule. So anytime we're driven with the choice or given the, when you say opportunity, we're stuck with the choice of sending the firefighters into a structure. In our current model, which you'll see in the document 4 that I started, I'll talk about in a minute, we're faced with having to make a decision. There's only, in the evening, as you see in the back of the room over here, I got two firefighters on duty right now. One of the gentlemen's going to drive a truck, the other one's going to jump off the truck ready to effect a rescue or extinguish a fire. That's not enough manpower. We can't get it done with that. Now, I can tell you that either one of them gentlemen, faced with the opportunity to run in and save somebody, they're going to do that. They're going to risk their life to save yours or your family's life. We're operating unsafely, which will lead me into the next document, document 4. I just want to point out that us being an OSHA state, we're faced with that problem every day, which is why this task force was formed. Mayor Wicker and the council recognized the problem, and we're trying to address that problem as it is. The document 4, Roger asked me to go through this document. It was a document I put together for the task force to inform them what our needs were. The mayor and council got what our needs were, but now I had a task force that didn't necessarily understand the needs. And so I needed to sell that to them, to tell them what, what the fire department was after. And Roger's asked me to try to keep this to about a 5-minute talk here. And so I go through and pick out all the key items. But I can tell you this letter is very key and dear to my heart, every bit of it. As we read through here, right about the 3rd paragraph, the department is responsible for fire protection within the city limits of Bluffton and is contracted for the fire protection in Harrison and Lancaster Townships. That's a total of 96 square miles. That is our first new coverage area. To put that in perspective, that's 218 to 224. That's Meridian Road to 800 East. It's 96 square miles that our one fire department operates from, with 9 full-time individuals and at this time 25 pay-on calls. 9 full-time and 25 pay-on calls. In the next 2 paragraphs, it tells us a little bit more on how we're staffed. I'm not going to get into that real in depth. I'll let you read through that. The last paragraph and the next couple on the next page are going to talk about the difficulties associated with the inability to safely staff the station for a safe response to emergency scene. As I kind of alluded to with OSHA standards 2 in, 2 out, as Chief Wolf alluded to, NFPA standards 2 in, 2 out. He did also mention that 2 in, 2 out, that is not including the driver of the apparatus, that is not including command staff. You need an officer outside for them people inside to talk to, which OSHA 1910 goes full in depth on how they have to have radio contact with one another. So you have an officer outside, an operator of an apparatus, 2 firefighters standing in the ready in case something goes wrong with the 2 firefighters inside. And so in our current stance, with 1 firefighter jumping off the truck, we count on our paid-on calls. Our fire department does not operate without its paid-on call staff. Some of the members are in this room tonight, and I thank them. We do not work without them. The only problem is with paid-on call staff, they're not firefighters jumping off the truck. They're not firefighters coming off the truck, packed up, geared up, ready to go in. Those firefighters have to come to the scene, they drive their personal vehicle, they fight through traffic because not everybody gets over for blue lights. They show up, they get out, they put their gear on, they go to the truck, they put their pack on, they're assessing the scene while all this is going on. They go to IC, see what's needed. Then we start slowly getting that manpower there. Our station operates also off of automatic mutual aid. So we have our neighboring departments that respond in and help try to make up that lack of manpower. But again, and then further in my letter here, we can't operate. Scenes are profoundly affected by the amount of staff we have to throw at a scene right up front. Without that manpower, we struggle to get control of the scene. The last page talks a little bit more about the station that we're in, when it was built. The station was built in 1971. It was built for 3 full-time members, I believe it was, and enough apparatus to fill 4 bays. And they had a couple apparatus across the street in the mayor's building currently now, City Hall. That became a problem, and they added on to the station in 91. Added another full-time guy, and now, you know, in 2021 or 20, we are again at a problem. That station does not suit our needs. Our apparatus has outgrown the building that it's in. The manpower has outgrown the building that it's in. During the daytime, we have the two engineers in there, paid on call firemen, the chief and I. It gets a little tight quarters. We make it work. We do our best, but for us to be able to safely respond in our community, the department needs to grow, and the staff that's in it needs to grow. I appreciate your time. I hope you can find some time to read through this letter and get a full idea of the needs of our fire department. Thank you.
Thanks, Don and Chris. If you would turn now to document number 5. Also, please refer to document 1.2. How should the city fund 4 additional firefighters? The task force spent a lot of time on what's fair, and we will go over the rationale for that in some succeeding documents. But we believe that expecting the city to pay for 4 firefighters and the townships to pay for 1 additional firefighter, that's 4 additional and 1 additional, was the best approach to use. How would we pay for it? The city budget, the general fund presently includes, in 2021, a $370,000 appropriation to pay to the water fund for what's called hydrant rental. As hard as one tries, you can't really find the basic rationale upon which that began, when it began, and so on. The best explanations are one of 2. One is that the fire department does use water, and there are also costs to maintaining and replacing fire hydrants, which are the essential tools for the fire department. If you take that approach, the total cost is probably in the $50,000 a year range. There's another approach that says that you've got to take a proportionate cost of new water lines, new tank out north, whatever, to create the pressure to provide the water through the hydrants. If you do that, it would be a higher number, but the exact cost we do not know at this time. To determine that would have been a very costly study, and the decision was made not to do that, and I think it was a wise decision. The task force recommendation is to fund 2 firefighters through a reduction in the transfer of money to the water department. That money is property tax money being paid to the utilities. Now, property taxes are not paid by everyone. Tax-exempt churches, tax-exempt retirement homes, or schools and others that are major water users don't necessarily pay property taxes. And then we have the TIF districts, which are essential to our industrial growth, but those taxes do not come in to the general fund either. For the improvements, they go into what's called the TIF fund, and they are not available on an annual basis to assist with the cost. So what's the cost? If we were to cease transferring $180,000 from the general fund to the water department, it would increase water rates for the individual by $2.49 a month. That's just under $30 a year. That would be the cost, the additional cost in taxes based on our recommendations for the additional 5 firefighters. the city picking up 4, the townships picking up 1. Where would the rest of that money come from? You can't buy 4 with 180, you can buy 2. The rest would come from what is a local option income tax public safety fund. We believe that the annual increase in that fund, or the annual revenue from that fund, will pay for all or almost all of 2 additional firefighters presently. That fund, as of April 30th, had a balance of $930,000 in it. So there is enough buffer there that if it took a year or 2 for those revenues to be totally adequate to pay for the additional 2, that would happen. Next question becomes, how would the townships fund an additional firefighter? They can't increase the tax rate for the fire territory. Can't be done according to the state. However, the townships do receive a very adequate support from other tax monies. And the point is, for the general fund of the township, anybody who lives in Bluffton or in the townships proper pays those taxes. I live in the city, I live in Lancaster Township, I pay township taxes just as though I didn't live in the city. I pay the same amount. Those funds in Harrison Township, in the general fund, if you will, of the township fund, had a balance of about $757,000 at the end of last year. It gained $96,000 from January 1 of 20 to December 31 of 20. At one point, it was suggested by a person, well, you're just asking the township to pay this money because they have it. That's not true. We felt a responsibility, if we were going to recommend additional costs, tell people, here's how we think you could pay for it. So that's why we're making that recommendation. We think it can be done without any tax increase, any fee increase of any kind for township residents. We also believe that it is fair, and we'll talk about that as we move along. For Lancaster Township, all of their monies, as you look at document 7, you'll see that there is a firefighting line there, and it had $188 received and $188 paid out. That's what I was talking about, a very minimal amount. Marcia then sends that money to the fire territory. I want to make something real clear. Townships across the state have pretty large balances for the most part. Legislature talks about things every year, but we're very fortunate in Wells County. Township trustees and advisory boards are very conservative with those expenditures. And no one should be pointing a finger saying, why do you have that much money in there? They have that much money in there because they take care of it. That's not necessarily true across all parts of the state, but we're fortunate in Wells County, and we'll recognize that. In the township fund of Lancaster Township, when you combine, and the township officials have the ability to say where the tax revenue is to go a particular year. It can go to the township general fund or the township assistance fund. Now, this past year was the toughest year they've had in a long time, I think, for township assistance. But between those 2 funds, Lancaster Township increased their cash balance by about $127,000. What does that mean? We believe it means that township residents should be very comfortable that they could take on the responsibility of paying between them for another firefighter to gain the kind of fire protection that we believe is essential without endangering their cash balance, without endangering their funding, without creating any kind of increased tax or fee. Document 8. Document 8 was passed in 2008 by the Indiana legislature, and essentially was passed because fire territories were struggling, but townships had enough revenue that they could assist. So this statute says that any township can transfer money from its other funds to the fire protection fund as they need. Have to have a resolution or ordinance, and that's how they do it. The next page is a result of, and as I was meeting with one advisory board, one of the board members, not present tonight, indicated that he was aware of a home that sold in Wells County, that if it sold in Allen County, they would have paid $2,000 a year less in taxes. I think my jaw dropped because I knew that couldn't be. But if you go to the state website, it's called the Indiana Gateway, you can look up every taxing unit in the state, and you plug in whatever value for a home you want. I chose 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, and as you review that, I think you'll find exactly what I've printed here, and that is that we're very fortunate in Wells County. Now, we'd all like to keep it that way, but our taxes certainly are not higher than any of the surrounding areas, period. Document 10. Document 10 is really important, and I hope we grasp it. I was asked last night, it was suggested, that instead of building 2 fire stations, we ought to remodel the existing station for fire trucks. We ought to build 1 additional fire station, and then we ought to build a new police station. I want to talk about that just a minute. If you look carefully at the top 4 lines of Exhibit 10, you'll see that Lancaster, the city of Bluffton, occupies 8% of Lancaster Township and 10% of Harrison Township. Now, no one is more appreciative of the police and their work than I, but they don't sit in one spot. They're out and about. They're on Dustman Road quite a bit. You know. Fortunately, I've not met them personally on that road, but potential's there. Our station is literally located in the center of the territory that the police serve. Might be off a block or 2, but it's pretty close. Fire department, on the other hand, does not drive around. They are in a central location to be dispatched as needed. The area covered in the townships is a cost factor. That is, and we'll get to a map that demonstrates why I would say that. The population is a little bit different ratio than this. The population, 66% of the residents in Lancaster Township live in the city. 79% of the township residents in Harrison Township live in the city. What's fair? Area matters. If a combine catches fire in a field 6 miles away, that's pretty important. Probably equal or exceeding the value of many homes today. Very important that fire department get there. The next document just kind of covers some of that in the same way. I'll ask Don and Chris if they want to jump in here as well on this one. The 2019 runs, and you can also look at document 12 at the same time. We'll just use those both. In 2019, 626 fire runs, 66% in the city, 11.5% in Harrison, 15% in Lancaster, and mutual aid accounted for 6.6%. Mutual aid being they have to go help in Decatur or Osseo or wherever. That's, or Huntington, that's mutual aid. Also, in the city of Bluffton, the city has chosen to have the fire department cover EMS needs when the EMS is not here. If you're in the city and you're having a heart attack or something very serious, and you call 911 and the EMS is gone, they're going to go cover that till the EMS gets there. That's what those 321 runs. That has not been a desire of the fire protection territory, and so it's not listed. The other thing I want to cover is population. The city of Bluffton in the 2010 census had 9,897, fire territory 4126. That comes out 71%, 29%. What's fair in terms of funding additional fire staff? The taxable assessed value, Bluffton 452 million, fire territory 276. The funding source, excluding hydrant rental costs, the funding source for 2020, which is what we were studying, 74% came from the city, 26% from the fire territory. Again, as we look at adding staff, what's fair? The proposed allocations are that the city would pick up 4, which is 80%. The fire territory would pick up 1 between the two townships. We would suggest it be evenly split, but that's up to them. Don, Chris, any additional comments you want to make on these?
Yeah, I can.
Sure.
I'm going to bounce around just a little bit. We'll go back to and back cleanup on document 10. Roger started to allude to police station placement, fire department placement. The fire department now sits in the center of the city, which is, and as he mentioned, needs to be centrally located as we tend to stay in our fire station, wait to be paged out. As you'll see in documents 13 and 14 later, we have proposed a station somewhere near 200 North and somewhere near 200 South, putting us centrally located in Lancaster and centrally located in Harrison, combined with the city and the territory. And one other item on document 10, we get into a conversation about addresses and area, and understand this is well laid out, but whether it's 8% or 92%, Bluffton Fire Department is responding 100% of the time, whether it's an address in a rural area or an address in the city. Just a couple items I thought I needed to touch on. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Let's move then to document 13. And for me, this is pretty meaningful. I hope it will be for you. What does document 13 show? It essentially demonstrates the people-dense areas that are the purview of the fire protection territory. Again, served by the Bluffton Fire Department, paid for by the fire territory. What are the big areas there? Norwell High School and Norwell Middle School, Kingsland, Toxin, Crickville, Murray. All of those are in the fire territory, and they are people dense. You also are aware, I'm sure, that the Regional Sewer District is doing significant work in several of these areas. What does that mean? We think it means there's going to be growth there. We think it means there will be additional homes, there will be additional opportunity for people to improve their homes, and so on. The one I really want to point to right now is River Terrace. When you think about fire protection and what we need, I was actually a person who will be involved in some decision-making, touring the fire station, and made a comment, I trust it was in jest, that, you know, fire protection can be a hose and a bucket. When you think about elderly folks on the second story in River Forest, when you think about kids in school, be it this school, be it school in the Norwell district, in high school here, be it the academy out on 124, what does that mean when you pull up to a fire and you can't go in safely because you don't have enough manpower? We believe that Don and Chris were not wrong when they said long-term, we need 6 per shift. The fact is, we can't afford it right now. We need to grow there over time, but we can't afford it right now. The dollars aren't there. What we can afford are 5 additional firefighters, and when you think about River Terrace, when you think about Christian Care, when you think about a home out in the country where the kids are sleeping upstairs, hose in the bucket doesn't get it, but 2 firefighters per shift don't either. We cannot count on just good fortune much longer. Let's look at Exhibit 14. This is Harrison Township. What we haven't mentioned yet is our industrial area. Why 2 stations? And I must confess, when I began with this group, after the mayor asked me to serve as chair, I thought we needed 2, but I thought one needed to be west and one needed to be east. So we were over there, and one of the first comments the 2 chiefs said was, we don't have 4-mile-long trains. We have a station at 200 north or thereabouts, and 200 south or thereabouts. We can get across one of those crossings immediately, and we'll get there very soon with the next crew as needed. Right now, it is with the good help of the police department, I'm told, that our fire people actually know if there's a train, what's the closest open crossing. They don't automatically know that. Railroad doesn't send a message. That's a bad joke, but it's true. The police department assists. The 2 stations make an awful lot of sense, both in terms of these 2 documents reaching the furthest points while also being readily accessible to the downtown and the city, but also accessing the west side. And as you know, the other side of the railroad is growing rapidly in terms of industry, and we need to deal with that. What about Harrison Township? Veracruz, Veneto, these schools that are in the city but need very much that additional staff. Very large church out in the country. I think it's called the Apostolic Country Church, I believe is the correct name. If it's not, I beg your forgiveness on that, but I think that's it. The amount of anhydrous that's used and other kinds of things that need to be addressed by the fire department. We also haven't mentioned the very important entity that the territory is responsible for, and that's a state park. We don't get any revenue from there, but real opportunity for the need for our fire department. I think that as you look at that, I hope it resonates with you in terms of what are the needs and how do we take care of them. So if we build 2 stations and we remodel the present station for the fire department, And the police department has not been asking how to spell the word Taj Mahal. So we trust they're going to be very reasonable, but yet looking down the road at what the needs are. We believe that, and we started out saying to the chiefs and the architects, we want the construction cost for the fire stations to come in at $5 million or less. They didn't make that goal. They came in at about 5.5. When you add the remodel to the police station, when you add buying land, when you add equipment, there's a whole bunch of equipment that are, I don't mean firefighting equipment, I mean fire protection equipment for our firefighters, such as taking care of things when they get back from the fire and so on. That will be needed. When you add that equipment, we're going to be right at the $8 million total. So how do we pay for that? Well, the city, we believe, is responsible for that facility, those facilities. And on document 15, what would it cost? Scenario 1 is 2 stations and the police remodel in 2 separate projects. There are legal advantages to that. There also is minimal cost difference from trying to lump them together, be able to let them, may get the same bidder, we may get 2 bidders. We hope that it's competitive throughout. If you own a $75,000 home, it'd be about $10 a year. $100,000, $20, $200,000, $61, a $300,000 home, $102 a year. What that says is over a 20-year period, you pay about $2,000 towards the cost of the additional facilities. Scenario 3 is 1 station. 1 station, rather than 2, reduces the total cost by about $1.5 million. And you can read what the cost would be there. $300,000 home, it'd be a little less than $20 less per year for that 20-year period. Why 2 stations? I want to summarize. Number 1, it gives us much greater proximity to all areas of the area that our fire department is charged with protecting. It provides faster, quicker service to those sites. It also addresses the train issue. How do we navigate those tracks? How do we do that? The other part that's very important in this, I think, is that it also brings a long-term future view of what we're going to need 20 to 30 years from now. If you're watching the news at all, you know that in a couple of years, there's very likely going to be about 500 more housing units to the north end. And we're reading now about some significant growth in the south end. We have an employer ready to employ 400 plus people as a new factory opens up. And we have existing people wanting people here. We believe Bluffton, there's no question that it's growing, and we think that if we build 1 station, we're locked in for a long time. Because where do you build the second one? Do you put it north, you put it south, what do you do? And so we think now is the time. The task force voted unanimously that need to be 2 stations. Funding of the additional firefighter was a point of concern for 1 township, and so it was not a unanimous vote there. I look forward to your questions. I'm most pleased to turn it over now to Emily, Howard, and Todd, and appreciate you doing this. Can we all talk? You're good.
Good evening. My name is Emily Howard. I'm an architectural graduate, Alabama architecture here with licensed architect Todd Adams. And We first of all wanted to, they're saying that maybe you can't hear me. Is that better? Thanks. First, we wanted to thank you for having us here tonight to share about the process we've gone through with the task force and Fire Chief Craig and Deputy Chief Wolf, and I'm sure input from their members as well, and the city. So thank you for having us to share, and we're going to first show you some images from the existing fire station in case some of you haven't gotten to visit it before. I'm going to try and turn it here a little bit. These two images are from the apparatus area, the bays of the existing fire station, and you can see here that they are packed full of equipment, and so looking for more space for their essential engines and apparatus and trucks and equipment. Also, in the background of a lot of these images, you'll see creative storage solutions from the fire department has come up with, and a lot of that's in built themselves. So we're really interested in providing adequate storage in the future for them. On the left, you see their existing kitchen, and it's a little narrow, and so as they have mealtime, the ladies and gentlemen that are in there trying to prepare things are little close quarters. On the right, you see their workout facilities, and we joked last night that there are any overhead presses going on up there. So. On the left, I know it's not a very inviting image, but this is, speaks to what Roger spoke of, needing gender diversity within the fire station itself to accommodate everyone. This is the restroom with shower that's next to the bunk-style sleeping quarters. On the right is where they store their maintenance equipment. I think the left image is very important as well because as Roger spoke about the need to keep the members of the fire department safe as possible, we're hoping with the new design and large focus, as I'll speak to in a minute, is the need for adequate decontamination as they come back from fires. Their bottles and gear are covered in contaminants, and we want them to stay safe and be able to clean off the carcinogens as best they can and keep it contained to what we'll call the dirty areas and keep their sleeping, living, admin areas clean. In that left photo, you see a machine that washes their day-to-day clothing, like their Class B, like you see some of them here wearing. Right next to the heavy machinery that washes their gear that they would need to clean after like a structural fire with larger particulates on it. And next to that is the ice machine. And to the, I believe there's an extractor, or and so we're interested in kind of isolating those in the proper areas, clean, dirty, being isolated from each other. Oh, on the right is their hose drying tower. So they dry their hoses by hanging them. But a safer method is what we're after with the new design as well, because they climb a ladder to hang, pull the hoses up there and dry them right now. Storage, there's storage everywhere, a lot of creative storage, new built storage, more storage. We have a lot of equipment. Okay, this image speaks to the driving motivators behind the layout of each of the fire stations. And you'll see Fire Station 1's first floor plan and second floor plan on pages 17 and 18. The idea is, you can see on the left side of the first floor here, it's all green, and that is to communicate that we want to keep all of the clean things like living, admin, in the green areas. My laser pointer doesn't want to work, but on the right side is like orange, and that is designates the dirty spaces. So this would be where the apparatus are, and the apparatus bays, as well as the support spaces that would clean their gear and their gear bunker and all of the things that we want to keep isolated to the more dirty functions. And the same occurs upstairs. Another delineation I want to point out here is this vertical line, the dotted line, and that is to signify the importance of keeping the admin and living spaces separate from the apparatus bay, and also public and more private space that's separate from each other too, because it is their home for a couple days a week. This is the same floor plans, but it shows the spaces labeled, much like on your handouts. And you can see the lobby and the public spaces are located on the lower left corner here, with the administration offices and a conference room. And then the more private spaces for the members of the fire department are here, with dining and a day room and kitchen, conveniently located on the first floor so the families can join them. And then what was the orange spaces, the dirty areas. We have the apparatus bay and supporting spaces for those. The chiefs and their members greatly helped in designing very detailed the apparatus bays and their layout, because they have to stage all of the equipment in the proper order, that if they get such and such a type call, they can just pull right out. If they get this other type call, they can pull out the appropriate equipment. The same strategy was used for, this would be an example of Station 2, and you see Station 2's first and second floor plans on documents 19 and 20. So all of the living and admin areas are in the green, the apparatus bay and all the sports spaces are in the orange. And then the next slide shows the same floor plans, but with the labels, having the administrative offices here, the living spaces and fitness area here, apparatus bays, and all the support spaces. The dorms on both stations are located upstairs with locker rooms for male and female, and shower rooms for male and female. So a neat thing we do in our office is everybody gets excited to do the design work as well. And so we kind of opened up the design of the building to the whole office. And anybody who wants to participate gets to. And so we had what's called a charrette, is what we call it. And we share the program and some driving forces behind the design. And they just go at it. And then we get together after a few days and see what everybody came up with. And I think we probably overwhelmed the task force with about 17 ideas at one of their meetings. And they said, we like this, from this one and that one, and not this and not that. These are a sampling of some of the variety of looks and aesthetics that the people in our office came up with, the designers. And we were able to work with the task force and the chiefs to really pare that down to more what your city might need. And on, I think, page 16, this was the conceptual aesthetic that was arrived upon with the task force and the fire department. And it's just a general aesthetic representation of the concept that they would like us to move towards. And a lot of the decisions for the aesthetics were driven with economy in mind, because we know it's really important to the task force and the city. So we feel like we kind of tightened it down to achieve that as well. Later, there'll be opportunity for questions, and feel free to grab Todd or me if you have any that would pertain to us, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Emily and Todd. I want to make just a few comments, and then we're going to be done. You note something quite different in these plans from what is present. They're individual sleeping rooms. I don't know how long it's been since you've gone with people, but we believe in attracting top-level firefighters now and in the future. That will be a very appealing part. There'll be privacy. They actually will get rest instead of listening to someone snore next door that they don't sleep with next to all day. The gender diversity is really big for us. Very frankly, we're not where we're supposed to be right now. And we believe that this approach will definitely take care of that. Again, we thank you very much for coming. Scott Metzer, City Councilman, is broadcasting this on a Wells County Voice. We appreciate that, Scott. I think I pretty well introduced everyone else, but now, what are your questions? How can we respond? I'll be glad to, yes, sir.
I'm Nick Jackson. I got a question. If we're not able to staff what we need right now, how are we going to staff another complete fire station?
I didn't hear the last part, Mr. Jackson.
We are shorting our firemen right now in our current location by 8, I believe you said.
5,
Okay,
from
5.
what we're recommending.
Okay. How are we going to get the manpower for the second station?
Thank you. You didn't hear the question, perhaps you all did. If we are short manpower now, how will we staff an additional station? We plan to staff the stations initially with 2 firefighters at each station, so that we have people on site almost immediately from one station with the others to follow. Long term, we believe that those numbers are going to grow as the size of the community grows, and it's why the facilities are sized in a way to accept more staff, but also they're expandable if need be. The chiefs have indicated they feel very comfortable this will work well for them with the 5 additional staff. If I didn't answer your question, please ask again.
Well, everybody's having problems getting people right now in
You're right.
everything.
We're hopeful that the appeal of the stations will help attract people rather than presently serving as an obstacle for people to come work for us. We're not the most inviting fire department right now in terms of facility. These are not Taj Mahals, but they're going to be really well done and will serve for a long time. I want to share that the task force, and I'll take a lot of the blame, was pretty demanding that we keep the cost as low as possible. I mean, we harped on that. We spent many meetings working on it with the architects and with the staff. They have one luxury in there. Most of you are very aware of a really old fire engine that belongs to the city of Bluffton that shows up in the street days parade and other kinds of things. They asked, and we did our best, and the architects were able to size the lobby in such a way that that fire truck could be in the front of Station 1. And that was a pretty important thing for them. We think it's a great thing for the city of Bluffton in terms of historical value. And so that's the one thing, if you say, what's in there that doesn't have to be, it's about a, how big is the thing? 6 by 22 foot. 6 by, there's about 150 square feet that could have probably been eliminated, though we still need a lobby. So that's the one luxury I think they were afforded. Other questions, please. Marcia.
Did you want to talk about equipment for both of these stations?
I can't. She's asking if we want to talk about equipment for both stations.
The equipment for both stations, thank you. Our existing equipment meaning fire trucks and rescue boats and all that, will be adequate to initially provide the equipment for both stations. But as the chiefs have said, when we buy a new piece of fire equipment, a new tanker, a new pumper, whatever, we usually sell the old one to another fire department that can't afford a new one. We'll be keeping those longer. We'll be on the same replacement schedule, and there is an accrual fund in the city. I think it's got about $1.2 million in it right now, that we contribute money to each year to set aside so that the money's there when a new tanker, pump, or whatever. The fire territory also this year is buying I believe it's tanker, for the department. They do that from time to time. So they contribute towards the equipment as well as towards the staffing. But thank you, Marcia, for that question. Other questions, please? We'd like you to leave here as informed as possible. Very much appreciate your attendance and your interest. And any other questions? I don't want to entertain. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, station 1 and 2. What is the square feet, or how much space, or what is the square?
Of each
on
station?
Station 1, are they the same? Are you going the same?
No. Station 2 is smaller.
That's a great question. They indicated the need of Station 1 to be larger. It has a conference room and more offices, and then it's just over 25,000 square feet. And Station 2 has very similar spaces, no conference room, just fewer of them. So some of them are smaller, some are fewer in number, like dorm rooms.
And the center part of it, is that where your trucks are going to be?
Yep, and Station 1 has 4 drive-through apparatus bays and a maintenance bay. Station 2 has 3 drive-through and a maintenance bay, and Station 2 is
The maintenance bay on the second one.
just 3. You're right. Just 3 drive-through bays, no maintenance bay on Station 2, and it's nearly 18,000 square feet in total.
But they both will have equipment in them.
I understand.
Both will be. One of the questions with that was a topic of discussion one night is, why do you need drive-through? Can't you back equipment in? The issue is not putting it in, it's taking it out. When the fire call comes, you don't want to have to move 2 or 3 pieces of equipment to get the one in back. You want to be able to drive out, so they will be parked so they can exit both directions with whatever pieces of the equipment they need.
So all the maintenance on all of them will be done at once at Station 1.
I'm sorry?
All the maintenance of the upkeep of all the equipment will be done at Station 1.
When you say all major maintenance, the answer would be yes. I'm sure there'll be some minor maintenance to be done at Station 2 also. But in terms of a maintenance bay, yeah, there would just be one.
We perform our own services on our apparatus.
You have mechanic and all that stuff there.
We have jacks of all trades. So currently, we have been this is our year for services, and we have, we go through, we change the oil, the fluids, the filters, and grease all the joints on it, and just do annual services or biannual services. So we do that ourselves. So having a bay to do that in would be nice, because now when we do it, we have to take a truck out of service, and that truck can't move, and then we have to circulate things around and put that truck behind a different truck, and it's just cumbersome. It would be great to have a maintenance bay where we could take a truck out of service, put it in that bay, work on it, it sits in that bay, it's not in the way. When it's done, then it goes back in line with the main part of the station.
We had one other question last night that might be of interest to you, and I don't want to prolong this. Unfortunately, I can't see the clock. Is it about 8? I don't want to keep you too long. The question was, why don't you remodel and add on to the existing station? First of all, it doesn't deal with our need to separate, to have one north, one south. Secondly, the station is not tall enough and the door's not wide enough to handle the kind of equipment that needs to be purchased today. Don made a great analogy last night in answering that and saying, look at the kind of farm equipment that's used today, as was in the 1990s, 1970s, whatever. Fire trucks are the same thing. And the last one we purchased, they had to downsize both height and width to get it to fit in. And if you've ever seen them exit the fire station towards the city building, it's tough duty getting out of there the way it is. So that, in case that came to mind, I wanted to share that. Any other questions? We're going to get you out of here.
How much square feet do you have now at the old station?
I don't know.
The bay length, the bay where the trucks park, is 85 feet in depth. Each door, and we have 4 doors, are 12 foot wide and about a foot in the middle. So hopefully somebody in the room is doing the math. So 4 times 12, 48 plus 1 between, say 60 feet. Say 60 feet by 85 feet is our base space. And then a chief and I share an office. We don't have enough space to have separate offices. My lieutenant doesn't have his own office, my lieutenant of training. He actually operates in a pass-through room. We put a desk in.
But that will all be solved in Station 1.
Do what?
That will all be solved.
Exactly,
Station
yes.
1.
So,
I'm talking about the second station. I wonder if you're comparing, if we could remodel and be the second station where we're at now with the police and then the new one. And not have one. That would be on the east side of the railroad tracks and the new one would be on the west side.
I think,
That's just a thought.
yeah, I think the task force really looked hard at that east-west thing, and the far better solution, everybody came to the conclusion, was a north-south, because then you can get across the tracks at one or the other, and it also then addresses the outlying areas of the fire territory much better than a central location.
I always felt like the fire station was great because of the apartments and the clinic and everything here. The fire trucks was right there instead of coming in from the town, from the apartments downtown and that.
We look hard at what is a safe and appropriate distance to be in terms of response time, and that's why the 200 north and 200 south is picked. But we're also extremely concerned if an agreement is reached to continue working with the fire territory. Now, if that agreement isn't renewed, then having 2 stations probably doesn't make a lot of sense. But if it is, then that gives the long-term accessibility to those outlying areas that's so
Does
critical.
anybody know the growth from 2010 to 2020?
Not much. Not much.
But you're anticipating it to be double.
There are already builders building 180 apartments. They're also already approved and underway soon about, what is it?
156.
Pardon?
156 homes.
156 homes and probably another 130 coming east as well. And those are, I think those are pretty sure things.
Well, it's a farming district.
Pardon?
Basically, it's a farming district. We don't grow that much here. And a lot of the times our kids even move on.
Well,
I do know we have people coming and that's good.
I'm not wanting to debate, but I want to point out that one of the major impediments to areas outside the city with the type of soil we have is sewer. You talk to the regional sewer district people, there are many homes in our county in trouble because they do not have adequate sewage. Really, that's why the regional sewer district's doing what it's doing, and it's going to Murray, it's going to Craigville, all those areas. So we think you're going to see a change there. Anything else? Thank you. And thanks to the task force for all your work. We appreciate it. And thank you for coming. Don, Chris, well done. Emily, Todd, thank you.